What's going on, guys? Hey, I'm super excited to have my brother in here with me today. Obviously, as a locked-in coach and a part of the staff that we've assembled, and just super excited to get him to talk to you guys and talk a little bit about his journey and about how his journey has now led into us being together and as brothers and friends and quarterbacks and coaches, kind of getting aligned and really serving the community and helping you guys get a better understanding of what it is that we learned over the course of our career and where we think the game has evolved to and where we are positionally at this position, as well as personally in the quarterback underneath the helmet. So my brother's a super high achiever. Obviously, had a slower growth spurt coming up, and he'll talk to you about his story, but then burst onto the scene in high school and was one of the top players in the country at the position coming out of high school, and then went on to Washington and had a little bit of an adverse career up at Washington, but was a part of great teams for a great coach, and then went to Colorado State. Now he finds himself with us today in Germany as a professional quarterback, and he's going to be pissed at me, but I like to think that he's doing some pretty special things over there. And so we're going to talk a lot about a lot of different things and ultimately get started as we start bringing more and more information to you guys and involving us in the community. So the KJ, super fired up to have you, man. I appreciate you being here, bro.
Hell yeah. I'm excited to share.
No question, dude. Well, for these guys, I don't want to waste too much of their time in terms of just really trimming the fat of both your story, my story, and always giving them information immediately and being, quick to give them the full perspective of why we're doing this and what the quarterback position means to us. So why don't you, I gave them a brief little intro into your time. Why don't you talk for a second about what has your football journey looked like, and what have your experiences been to this point in your life?
Yeah, from the outside, I mean, I want to define it as the outside looking in first. That my ball experience was, very up and down. When I first started playing ball, I wasn't the most gifted, or I didn't even really love it all that much. I started out as like a nose tackle, nose guard in Pee Wee football, getting limited plays, and it wasn't until I started to grow and grow into my maturity, physically as a player, that I started to see that I actually could become something on the field. And then watching, obviously, you play college football, and then just seeing that option being even there, that I could possibly even like fathom that idea or that dream. And so once that started, and then once I started to fill out, started to feel my body getting bigger and stuff, I started to see myself becoming better as a player. And then it kind of ran away with itself. In high school, I just became addicted to it. I was lifting all the time, throwing all the time, and it was my passion. It was my dream to get a scholarship. I wanted to go to college to play football, and I did that. I played high school and did it at a high level. Was a high recruit. Went to the Elite 11. Was one of the top finishing 11, right behind Deshaun Watson, and was going to Vandy originally my sophomore year, but then ended up in Washington later on in my career in high school. Decided to switch, and so then I got to Washington, and there I pretty much definitely dealt with some adversity. I wasn't feeling too confident as a player, and struggled a little bit on the field. And I just really mentally couldn't get around to stepping into my full form and being the player that I wanted to be. And so I wasn't able to capture that opportunity the way that I wanted to. But then later on in my career, I figured out some things, really started to question the position, my whole just perspective and point of view on the position, which unlocked doors for me. It allowed me to tap into something that I wasn't able to tap into early on in my career at Washington. And that's why I decided to transfer. That's why I decided to transfer to Colorado State for one more year. Went there, played really well. I had a great time, loved Colorado State. I thought I played really well, enjoyed my time. And it was just kind of the beginning. It was really when I felt my best as a player, as a ball player. I had never felt that sort of confidence on the field. And that is the reason why I'm out here in Germany right now, because I really don't care where I am in terms of Germany, CFL, NFL. I'm just really enjoying me knowing that I'm playing my best and that I still have even more to go, and that I'm not even finished with my potential. And so to wrap it all up, it's been a crazy up and down experience through my ball career, just as a player. Through high school being super highly touted, to college kind of falling on my face, to then finishing at CSU kind of back up high, and now I'm still just riding that high and feeling the best that I ever have right now as a player. And so it's been a crazy journey for sure in terms of just ball.
Yeah, we've been together through the whole thing and had some crazy conversations through the whole thing. And I'm going through my adversity while you're experiencing yours, and really taking on what the quarterback journey looks like. And something like that's super fascinating about your story. Obviously the highs and lows, but the decision that you made, and you used a phrase there where you talked about unlocking doors, like starting to kind of change your perspective. We'll dig into the whole reinventing yourself process, but what were the things that provoked you in college when you were at Washington and kind of feeling stuck, or, in your words, you said you fell on your face a little bit, to essentially say, you know what, I'm going to do this differently and I'm going to finish this career with a different perspective. Talk a little bit about the things that kind of led up to that decision, and ultimately like what that decision looked like when you made it.
Yeah, basically during my time at Washington, especially early on, I was going hard. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't putting the work in. I was putting the work in and day out, grinding all day long, and I didn't feel the improvement. And that was the worst feeling in the world, something that I don't really want to ever experience again, and don't think that anyone should experience again. If you put in the work and are grinding and doing what you need to do, you should feel better as a player, as a person, whatever. If you put work into anything, you should improve in that area. And so for me to experience that and feel my lack of improvement, dedication was just sickening. And honestly, it took me, exactly like you said, like what provoked me was taking that time away after that, because mentally I had to pretty much check out for a second and just be like, okay, I'm grinding, I'm putting in all this work, and I'm not feeling improvement. So I had to mentally check out and step away to challenge my perspective and just be like, what is it that's holding me back? And so it took a while. It took more than 2 years, 3 years to really unlock and really like assess my position from a completely different perspective, where I now had to just come in with no rules that of anything that I had been taught before. And once I was able to kind of walk into it with a fresh perspective without any limitations that anyone had said about anything that I need to do, I kind of was now allowing myself to actually step into who I am, as opposed to who someone else wanted me to be. And so that is really what provoked me, along with regret. During my time at Washington, I put in so much work, but then I had to step away for a little bit and reassess my position. But during that time, it was starting to get to my junior year at UW. Senior year, I was feeling almost having one more year of eligibility left. And I really was starting to be filled with regret. It was this idea of, if I didn't give this one more shot, if I didn't go hard at this one more time with a completely different perspective, I would be really like pissed off at myself. And so once that kind of clicked, that emotion, that feeling, that's when I locked back in and came in with it with a new perspective. And that's what completely changed everything for me.
And when you talk about, and I've been stuck at the quarterback position before, and that stuck is more of a place that we find ourselves in our mind where we feel helpless. It's kind of that feeling of quicksand where it's like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, and it continues to sink you. And so as you took a break, you were able to find a little bit of clarity after a while of that break, and then reestablish kind of what this next step in your journey would be. Before we close that up, I'd be curious, and I'm sure everybody listening would be curious to know, as you made the decision to do that, what were the things that caused you to get stuck? Now, looking back in hindsight, what were the things that placed you in the position of feeling that helplessness or lack of improvement despite the work? As you look at it in hindsight, what put you in that place?
Honestly, it was rules and limitations and things that these golden rules that quarterback coaches slash like people, just mentors that had told me, you have to do this in order to be X, Y, and Z, to be the best player on the field. If you don't do this, you're not gonna be. And having that process and that thought in my head had me obsessed with doing that all the time. And it was the fact that that was the actual problem. And so, like, stepping away from the game and everything, I got to this point where I was filled with so much regret, possibly about my eligibility ending, that it didn't matter. I had nothing to lose at that point. I had everything to gain. And so I didn't have to keep this mindset that there was a golden rule, that I had to do anything physically or mechanically or anything like that in order to play this position. I basically had no reservations, and I could just attack it from a completely fresh and open mindset because I had simply nothing to lose. I could literally just do whatever I wanted and just come at it from a completely unbiased blank slate. And that's exactly what I did. And that's what allowed me to take this next step in my career physically as a player.
And so, as we'll unpack the decision and process and journey as you reinvented yourself, but before we get there, let's go emotionally into kind of what that journey looked like through the transition from high school as a 4-star Elite 11 quarterback to then being in college and, as you say, falling on your face or just not having the opportunity to play and feeling, different than you had before, definitely not comfortable. Talk to me a little bit about the psychological piece of the emotions that you felt as you were struggling to kind of figure things out while you were fighting it initially.
Yeah, I mean, to go back for sure, I mean, being in high school and being a high recruit and being part of the Elite 11 is definitely boosts your confidence and definitely makes you feel like you're a damn good player. And I felt like I was a damn good player. I mean, I was throwing with Deshaun Watson and I felt like I was right there with him, and to see what he's doing now, I mean, it doesn't really surprise me that much, but to know that I was there at one point with him in high school and to see where he trajected and where I kind of trajected once I got to college was very interesting. And it was also super enlightening to see how the emotion has the effect that it does. And so when I got to college, when I got to UW and wasn't playing very well, something was off. There was something for sure off. And I was still working, and I was still knocking down the door, showing up and putting in the work and trying to get better, but I just wasn't improving. I couldn't figure it out. I mentally couldn't figure it out. And I just kept, going down that tunnel and keep working, but I couldn't figure it out. And that was definitely an emotional low. I mean, like I said, if you're working at anything, a relationship, a marriage, or whatever, if you're putting in work in 24/7, 365 and nonstop work, I'm talking all night, all day, and you don't feel improvement, it has to be one of the worst feelings in the world. I can't imagine anything. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And so that's what I couldn't get around to, and that's what I couldn't accept. And so that despair of feeling that kind of trappedness of knowing that I was putting in so much work but not getting improvement, I couldn't wrap my head around or understand. And then kind of waiting on until later on in my career to reassess the position and come back and then start to feel all that improvement as I made changes was now the best feeling in the world. It was the exact opposite of what I had gone through. So
let's dive into that. So as you started to reinvent yourself mechanically and make those transitions, talk to me about what your mindset was through the whole thing. You just spoke to us about rules and how the rules led you astray initially into thinking that there was one way of doing things. So as you kind of broke your mindset that you had that had put you in a place where you obviously weren't feeling great and the emotional lows were rough. Talk to us about the mindset and process behind you essentially reinventing yourself both as a quarterback, mechanically, mentally, all of it, holistically.
Yeah, I mean, simply put, I basically took every single barrier or every single rule or, anything that had been taught to me and just threw it off the table. I completely threw it off the table and just said, I'm completely reassessing this with no limit, like no idea or no conceptions of what it's supposed to be, what it has to be, in what anyone else has said. And I just watched it for myself. I just studied it for myself. And when I studied the best, Rogers and all these dudes, that's when I started to change everything about my game to try and simulate or emulate their game. Because if we want to be the best, what we have to do is copy the best. That's the best place to start, is literally to just see what the best do and just start to copy it. And don't take the bottom half of the NFL, because there's a lot of stuff that the bottom half of the NFL doesn't do great. Take the very best at whatever position they are at, whether it's football, quarterback, whether it's business, anything. And if you just study what they do, you can become that. And so it was me studying that for myself without anyone else's conceptions or anyone else's, biases or anything, to just say, all right, I'm just going to watch this and I'm going to try and copy it. And that's pretty much what I did. And slowly I started to adapt the style of play that these guys, Pat Mahomes and all these guys, play the game with. And then once I started to adapt that same style with zero conception or zero adherence to anything, because I had nothing that I was tethered to or hanging on to as something that I had to do, now I was just able to let go and completely just play free, which is the philosophy and the psychology behind the position, where once you enter that space, now you're able to actually just play the game how we're supposed to play the game, which is free. We're not supposed to be tied to these rules and because that's just a tight, bogged down mind that's not able to play and react to this game, because this game is reaction. It's not just robotic, like just playing catch from 10 yards away. This game requires movement, and so we have to be able to move with our body.
Love it. So as we talk, basically your mental process there and what you talked about in terms of relinquishing the ideas of what had been in your head before, and how that, I have a degree in psychology and it's a huge passion of mine. And as I break it down from a psychological standpoint, it's entering flow state. And as we're in flow state, as we break that down, it's system 1 and system 2 ways of thinking. System 1 is essentially 2 + 2 = 4. Like, I didn't do the math problem as I did that. I was able to just inherently react because I've seen it enough. That would be the mechanics that you have now and the way you play the game now. Then system 2 is analytical. What's 56 times 14? It's like, I'd have to get a pen and paper out in order to do that. It's going to take me more time. I'm not near as reactionary. So what I would be curious to hear from you is, what's the difference in feeling? Like when you talk about feeling system 1 and flow state, which is where you are now, versus system 2 at Washington, trying to figure it out mentally, talk about just the difference in the way that those two things feel in whatever ways you think you feel them the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think system 1, and I can speak to most highly right now because it's so fresh and I feel this every day, is that I don't think about anything. Like, there's really nothing that I feel I have to do at all times, or my mind simply is just there where I'm at. I'm present and I'm just playing the game. Versus at my time at Washington early on in my career, I was bogged down. I had these limitations and I had these things, these reminders, these subtle checklist reminder things that I was telling myself on repeat as I would play the position during the game. And if you're doing that, you're now playing against yourself and you're playing against the defense. Versus when I'm playing the way that I'm playing right now, I'm playing strictly against the defense. I'm strictly here playing the opponent as opposed to playing the opponent and playing the opponent that's up here. So that's
no, the way that you articulate that is beautiful. Now, how is that process earned? Is that from trusting yourself in any particular situation and any movement, just knowing because you've done it so many times, or you trust your body so well to, remain in a state where you don't have to think about anything that you're doing? Or how do you articulate how you've earned that ability? Because obviously it's comfort, but how did you step into that? Is it just a byproduct of everything? Kind of talk about how you see that.
Yeah, I think it's a byproduct of everything, but I also think it's simply, just the work and practice, but putting your body in different positions, different angles, just literally different body positions, and seeing yourself be able to make throws regardless of whether your body is, leaning to the left, or if your body's leaning to the right, or if you're throwing over the top, or if you're throwing sidearm. Once you start to unlock that you can be just as accurate and put the ball wherever you want, no matter where your body is positionally angular, then there's nothing to be worried about. Why would I fear having to step up in the pocket and my body being like leaning to the right, or I have to get it around a defender, when I just did it in practice? I just did it in practice, so I know I can complete that ball and I know it's going to go exactly where I want. So there's no reason for me to question or even doubt that I'm about to make this throw, because I've done it so many times and I've put my body in that position in practice and I've seen I can do it. So now there's no reason for myself to doubt, and I know I'm going to make that play. So that's how I've stepped into it, is just by manipulating the game, by not just being stuck in this robotic sense of where the pocket is perfectly clean, because that's not how this game is played. This game is played by moving and playing, and there's so much going on. Our tackle could get beat here, and now we have to step up. There's so much going on that our bodies have to be in different positions, and so if we practice putting them in different positions but still able to deliver the ball, then there's nothing to be worried about. Now we can just play the game.
I love the way that you talk about that, but also like what we've discussed is your idea of experimentation is really, really cool to me. You basically just said that, but do you have anything else before we dive into Locked In and talking about what we're doing and the impact that we will have on the quarterback community nationally? For you want to talk about your idea of experimentation at this position, because I think that people will really benefit from listening to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think experimentation, just like an artist, like a musician and artist, I think we should look at our position of quarterback the same way. We are artists back there. We are creators, and we have to put our bodies in different positions and see if we can maintain that same control. Just like an artist puts their, talent in a different genre or something to see if they're just as good, or to see if they have that same level of mastery. So it's the exact same thing, is just experimenting and allowing yourself to not, feel perfect every time, and now challenging yourself, because experimentation is challenge. It's you just trying something new and realizing that you're not going to forget how to throw the football if you try something new, or not be able to throw the football again. So if you just allow yourself to relinquish that control for a second and just be like, all right, let me try this and see how this feels. All right, now let me try this and see how this feels. Now let me try. And if you just run through that simulation over and over and over, you'll realize that you can start to control the ball out of any sort of angle, and just now you have total control without having it, if that makes sense. I know it's super confusing, but
I mean, to a certain extent, but I could boil it down into a sentence where like you're not gonna learn yourself and your stroke without stepping outside of the box. So, without experimenting, there's no way to learn feeling behind everything you're doing. And that's something that you and I talk about constantly is how we feel through our movements because you're building this adeptness to understanding, kinesthetically how I operate, how do I work, how am I able to make the throws that you're talking about. And so without experimentation, I just don't see the possibility. So while it's like a confusing topic to kind of wrap your head around, because we do want to be accurate, we subscribe to the belief that like you will learn how to be more accurate by being more consistent and trusting the nature of what you do in a reactive state as opposed to pre-planning everything and forcing it essentially. Would you agree with that?
yeah, 100%, 100%. It's just getting out of this model that it has to be done this way. If I feel it has to be done this way, then when my body moves to the right in the pocket and my body's no longer in that position to do it this one way, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? If I haven't done it, how am I going to do it? It doesn't make sense. So you're not going to be able to do it. That's the basic math and basic simplicity. And once I realized that, that's what changed everything.
Hell yeah. All right, let's get going now with our passion of where we're at in our lives. And I'm even curious, just like anybody listening, to hear from you the answer to this question, which is, what is Locked In, KJ, and how did Locked In come about? How did this all come together the way that it has?
Yeah, I mean, Locked In has way too many there's way too many definitions or way too many even vehicles that it serves. And how it came about, I mean, it really came about by the fusion of you and I. Honestly, I would say that that's how it came about. I would say that my mechanical and journey as a player, in terms of understanding the position and what things I needed to change myself to become the best quarterback that I could be physically and just as a player. And then you being in college football, mentoring guys through college football, you wanting to be a college football coach, and then stepping out of that industry because you realized how limiting that was and you wanted to do something bigger, and taking what I had just experienced and how I had the biggest growth in terms of myself as a player and fusing those mechanics, that ideology behind how we play the position with your background of how we want to impact young quarterbacks and how, like messed up this whole quarterback world is in terms of just the recruiting process, just the entire thing, really. And so when you put those two together, that is what Locked In is. It's a service, it's a community for people to come together and to openly talk about the position, openly, discuss mentally where they're at. That's so much of your focus. So I'm having trouble just because that's everything that you're like very bought into, and I'm very bought into as well. But that's like your baby, and so just with developing guys as men and as players mentally on and off the field, and combining that with the mechanic side as my piece, is really what Locked In is really just about becoming our best selves, whether it's on the field, whether it's just as a person in society. And that's really what Locked In is. It's a lifestyle. It's how you do all things is, yeah, how you do anything is how you do all things. It's all about just starting to notice your habits, starting to notice anything that's detracting you from where you want to go, exposing you to your own BS and stuff that you struggle with and stuff that you need to
And giving you a
take.
platform to talk about it, man. Giving you a platform to talk about it, as you said, the community, just being able to share it. And that was going to be my follow up to everything you just said, because I just love hearing the way you say it. Because as KJ and I discuss often, like KJ and I are very different people, yet we love each other and are extremely close. And we see the world, like if there are two types of people, type A and type B, like let's call KJ type A and Austin type B. Like this guy is a very analytical thinker. I am a very abstract thinker. So like as you combine those two things, like he's talking about, you get a vast perspective, and ultimately we're passionate about a lot of these things. And I was going to ask you, based on the answer that you just gave, like what role do you think adversity has played in Locked In becoming a thing? Talk about that for a second.
Oh yeah, I mean, without adversity and without our journeys personally, Locked In wouldn't be a thing. It's been the complete like fusion of both of our adversities at the same time, coming to not a conclusion, but kind of an uphill where we started to figure it out and started to step into like what we actually wanted to represent or how we even actually wanted to go about our business. I was stuck in my college days at UW, and I was kind of in that rut for a while, and then I was able to climb out of that pit hole. And same thing with you, like you stepped out of the college world, and those combined at the exact same time for our adversities to match up at the exact same time to fuse together to now provide something for guys that are going through a very similar experience that we went through because we played this position, we did it in college, and so we're helping guys understand that journey, what it's going to look like, what it's going to be like, what they might experience. And so adversity is everything. And so actually taking on that adversity and noticing it and reflecting on it and then sharing that with other guys instead of having them under the idea that it's going to be a golden road and it's going to be perfect, because it's not. It's not.
And that obviously within the psychological world is going to play heavily into my answer to the next question, but I want your answer to the next question, which is, through your eyes, not mine, our collective vision, along with, Taj and Christian, like this is all coming together in a beautiful way. But what is your objective and what is your goal and what is your vision for what you see Locked In doing for the community at large, just in general?
Yeah. I think it changes every day in terms of the way that I see it. Like it starts, like it started for me kind of, just as I wanted to help guys. I wanted to help guys initially through my experience of, not experiencing what I experienced at UW, not falling flat on their face because of something that was holding them back. So what I want to provide them with is mechanics and stuff that allow them to become the best player that they can be so that they don't have to experience hitting that pitfall of doubting themselves and not feeling confident in their ability as a football player. But I think as it expands, it's so much more than that, as opposed to, it's not just about being the best player, and it's so much more about just the community at large of us all just supporting each other and understanding that we're all in this thing together and that we're all going through it. We're all battling different battles. Some guys come in as a freshman and ball out right away. Some guys don't play right away or don't play at all. And so, but no matter what, it's all part of our journeys, it's all part of our experience. And so Locked In for me is just a place really where it's just a community of guys that can really just like talk about their experiences and come together and become the best player that they can be, but also that it's so much more than that. And it's about family and it's about just all of us becoming the best people that we can be as well.
Dude, and using each other as resources, like what you're talking about, I think, one of the things that I love about the way that we coach is we talk about how when we're out training on the field, like, look, guys, like this is a laboratory, not a competition. And like while we're out here, we're here to support each other and discuss with each other what we're doing. And I don't care if you guys play each other once a year on Saturdays or Friday nights, like we're gonna help each other while we're out here. And we've noticed, a community that has loved and embraced that, and they've obviously, risen in level a lot. Their game is upped a lot. Then we've also seen some guys who, have a problem with that. And so, as you look at those people who may not embrace the things that we're discussing, what do you see in terms of commonalities of kind of any resistance to this way of thinking, or maybe the traditional way that the quarterback market that you and I were raised in, like the ways that it makes you think, that we challenge, not intentionally, but simply challenge because we have adversity that we've experienced due to some of those things. What are the things that I guess we're speaking to the young quarterback right now that maybe are things that tripped us up or pushed us down a road that's different than this open mindset, vulnerable, discussing, what we're trying to do, discussing our flaws, discussing our fears, chasing our best self? What are some things that maybe you would warn a younger guy just to watch out for along the process of trying to be great at this position?
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes back to whether you're okay with understanding who you are and being exposed to who you are. If you are afraid of that and scared of what you might find out about yourself, or then you're most likely not going to vibe well with what we're talking about, because we want to be authentic and we want to be real and we want to be who we truly are, and be able to talk about who we truly are. We don't want to hide anything from each other, and because that's exactly what we don't stand for. That's exactly what Locked In isn't. Is exactly what we see now on Instagram and what we see all over the place with just how flashy and everything. And that's not real. That's not who we actually are as players. That's not who we actually are as people. And so if you don't feel that way, then it's going to be kind of tough to kind of gel with us at first. But if you can get around to the idea of exposing yourself to, your own BS and wanting to grow as a person, and just realizing your own limitations, that doesn't mean that they're limitations that are going to be concrete or that have to hold you back, but just realizing them, so then you're able to push through them in order to unlock these next doors to become the best player, to become the best person that you can be. Then you will be able to jive with us. But yeah, I think that's pretty much any limitation or anything that a young guy might be weary about, is that, hey, like, this isn't going to be an easy process. It's not all about ball, and it's not all about just becoming the best quarterback you can be. We're going to be talking about, like, the psychology and the philosophy behind how you can become better as a person and stuff.
Love it, man. All right, let's pivot. Dude, it's always great. Obviously, KJ and I spend a lot of time talking together, but these conversations, especially within this context where it's like, it's a little bit more, less us just spitballing with each other about everything under the sun, and a little bit more buttoned up and pointed with some of the questions. Like, it's just always fun to hear your answers. And as we start to kind of wrap this thing up a little bit, and you've said a couple gems in here for quotes already, but do you have a favorite quote or a favorite saying or a favorite phrase that you really identify with, that you like, and kind of talk to us about it if you do?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and it's probably going to change like next week, or I probably had it ago or something. But the one that has been the most prevalent to me right now is we have the quote goes, "We have two lives, and the second one begins when we realize we only have one." That's a quote that, I mean, it really just like, I don't know, when I, like, at first you could read it and you're like, oh, like, that's interesting or something. But if you really like think about it, like, it's insane to think about it. And it's kind of exactly my journey, even at Washington and stuff, when I take a step back and it kind of touches on that period of regret a little bit when I started to realize that I only had this, like one shot left. I only had one more time left, and it took me being smacked in the face with only having such a finite time left to being like, I need to come at this again. I need to give this one more shot and see what I can do with it, which allowed me to take this next step in my career as a person, as everything, emotionally, physically. And so that quote is the quote that has been speaking to me.
Well, and I wanted to piggyback off the quote because it's an incredible quote. And like you look at it in my life, bro, and it's like we have two lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. It's like I wanted to be a collegiate football head coach. Like that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to impact the community the way that my grandfather did as a psychologist. And like I set out to be James Franklin, who I played for. I set out to be Dabo Sweeney or Nick Saban. And being a director of recruiting and recruiting GA and quarterback coach and, director of player and cultural development, like you're on your track. And, some of the awards and accomplishments I got and the guys that I coached, like I very much had that future that I had wanted ahead of me. And like your quote, like we have two lives and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. I realized that it was my ego that wanted that more than anything, that impact was going to be better served doing exactly what you and I are doing as we speak right now in this moment. And I think that the self-awareness in each of us that we've needed from each other too at different times, needing that support has led us to make decisions that kind of break away from the stat quo. And like for you to break away from the journey that you were on mechanically and reinvent yourself and now be, throwing 4 or 5 touchdowns a week out in Germany and enjoying, living in a different part of the world. Like it's just a beautiful thing. And then me, like I didn't know what this was going to look like, a year ago. And for me, like I love the quote, at least this is what it was for me a year ago. And like it changes every week also, but was, jump off the cliff and build your wings on the way down. And like for me, like I had to take that jump and I didn't know what LockedIn was going to turn into. In some ways, I still don't know what it's going to turn into, but I know the mission that's going to be served and I know the impact that's going to be had. And I know that we're on this journey for the rest of our lives because this is something that you and I find deeply passionate to our soul. And no, so that's a beautiful quote, man, a beautiful quote. Now, before I kind of fire just a bunch of things at you and I want like 30 seconds on each little hot button thing that I say. How about one thing, you've given young quarterbacks and young athletes a lot in this, but give me one thing specifically that you would just want to tell a quarterback if you had one thing to say to him, and it could be something that you've already said. I mean, I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of it, but to all of the guys that we work with, college, high school, youth, what's one thing that you think that they can all benefit from greatly that you would want to say to them?
One thing would just be to go back to remember why you like played the game in the first place and remember how you played the game in the first place. If it's taking you so far that you're so bogged down and so overthinking in terms of your mind and about something you have to do, anything that like just too much, come back to how you played the game originally. It is a lot of X's and O's and understanding defenses and all this stuff, but come back to just understanding that we have to play the game at the end of the day, that it is a game at the end of the day, and that we should have fun at the end of the day. I got lost so long in my career of just not becoming fun anymore, and that it was like very remote. It was very robotic and very like math equation trying to fit, and instead of reactionary and playing the game. This is a game, and so we have to react to it and we have to come back to that second grade on the playground mindset of playing this position. And if you do that, I guarantee you it's the funnest way to play the game. It sometimes is controversial to older, generations when they watch it because they want it to look hard. They don't want it to look easy. And but I'm telling you, for myself personally, I've never enjoyed the game more than I do right now, and it's because I'm playing it with this mindset of a 2-year-old, of a 5-year-old that just got on the, that just got on the jungle gym and that is just out there having fun, as opposed to thinking about so many different things at all time. I'm just enjoying it.
That's incredible. Yeah. All right, ready? I'm going to fire off a couple things and then we'll get out of here. I want you to quickly give me, what are your favorite routes to throw on the field and the most difficult routes to throw on the field for you?
My favorite routes to throw on the field are anything in breaking from the left. Anything in breaking from the left. So whether it's a dig, whether it's a bender, whether it's a bang post, whether it's a slant, I can, all day long. And so then the throws that I don't like the most are in breakers from my right. I think it's just a righty thing. And I think if you were to ask a lefty, it would be the opposite. Angle of how our arm works or something. Right. I feel pretty damn good at throwing like anything in breaking from my right, but like there's just a subtle, tiny little challenge more than the end breakers from my left. And it's funny, but that would just be it. But I still can rip an end breaker from my right.
I think we all know that. The favorite stadium that you ever played in, you didn't need to play in it, like anywhere that you went at Washington or CSU or now in Germany, like your favorite environment you've ever been in.
Yeah, it was probably when I first got to Washington my freshman year. The first game that I traveled to as I was a redshirt was we went to Oregon Stadium and saw Autzen Stadium, and it was with Marcus Mariota. It was the year that they went to the college football playoff, and he won the Heisman that year. And the place was just going off. And then we went there 3 years later, and they were like 5-7, and it was completely dead. So it just shows you how fair weather fans are, and experience can be depending on how you are as a program, where you're like if you're winning. But to see this team, that was going to the college football playoff, and just my experience, my first travel experience in college football, to be that. And I just remember, like the song that they were doing, and the fans were going wild. It was just an incredible environment. So that was probably the first one that I was like the most insane one that I had experienced.
That's awesome. This is for me selfishly. The memory from Austin, your older brother, me, his entire career, what is the game or thing that you remember most and why?
It's probably the New Mexico Bowl. It's probably the New Mexico. I mean that or Ole Miss Vandy with you and J-Mac going off and stuff, and on that like 4th down completion and stuff like that. But probably the New Mexico Bowl for sure. I mean, I was still in high school, and then I was there. I rushed the field after the game, and just to watch that and see you guys beat a good team in Fresno State. I mean, you guys were massive underdogs, and you balled out. So that was incredible. And David Leonard catching the touchdown too.
Dave.
So it was that was probably the one for sure.
Awesome. When I say the word sidearm to you, what does that mean?
Misunderstood.
Thank you.
When you talk about sidearm, people like to put labels on things. People like to say, "Hey, so you're a sidearm thrower. You throw sidearm," and I'm like, no, like I throw what the throw needs. If I need to throw sidearm, I throw sidearm. If I need to throw over the top, I'll throw over the top. It's not, there is no one way. There is no one slot that you have to throw from. You have to practice all of them because that's the game that we play. You might have to throw it from a higher slot. You might have to throw it from a lower slot. So I would just say misunderstood. Sidearm is just misunderstood.
I love it. Last two is the concept of chasing the carrot. What does that mean?
Yeah, chasing the carrot is just always feeling like there's something mechanically or something that you don't have in your repertoire yet as to why you can't play the position well. And I would say that it is important to, gain these things fundamentally and mechanically that are going to help you get better. But at the end of the day, if you're still stuck in that, that means that you're deficient somewhere because that means that you're not confident fully in your stroke.
Correct.
And that you aren't fully confident in making every throw at all times on the field. And so if you're stuck chasing the carrot in terms of chasing something that is holding you back from becoming the best player you can be, that you haven't learned yet or haven't gotten yet, then you're not going to be the best player that you can be right now. And so while it's important to, yes, chase the carrot somewhat and understand mechanics and stuff, at some point you have to release that in order to be able to step into the player that you are and allow yourself to play at the best level that you possibly can be.
That's beautiful, bro. If you're chasing something, I would argue that that is acknowledging there's a deficiency in your game, and therefore it's impossible to enter flow state. I mean, on a very fundamental level. Last one, didn't give you any idea of this before, so good luck, my friend, because it's kind of a loaded question. But KJ, how do you want to be remembered? With everything that we're doing and everything that you're doing as a player and the impact that's being had, what is it that at this point you want your legacy to be on life and the quarterback community, on however you choose to answer that question?
I just want to be remembered as just the most curious, as the most curious, open-minded guy that there is in terms of anything that you bring up to me, anything that, I'm curious. I want to learn about why you are the way that you are. I want to learn if you're a kid that I work with, I want to learn who you are, how you became who you are, what your family situation is like, because I like to understand how people are the way that they are, how they are wired by their environment. And so I would just say that I want to be remembered for my curiosity and my insatiable thirst to want to learn about whether it's cooking, whether it's rolling out, whether it's nutrition, whether it's working out, different exercises, whether it's hydration technique, whatever, anything that you are passionate about or excited about or exceptional in, I want to learn how you do it and what it is that you do, because I think that that's awesome. I think that there's so much in this life in terms of just passions, things that are amazing that you see people so passionate about and so exceptional at, and I want to learn all of them. Now that's impossible, but my mind is always just curious to learn if I can from someone that's exceptional at it. If they can just share that experience with me and even maybe teach me a little bit. So I just want to be remembered for my curiosity as a person and just that I'm super open and yeah.
Well, you're definitely living it, dog. So anyway, dude, appreciate you, and you'll be on this side of the interviews many times over the next few years, next long years. But appreciate everything, bro, and I think that was super impactful for these guys.
Oh yeah.